You know, I should probably get used to keeping my mouth shut from now on. No, seriously, someone bring on the Mask of Silence and get to work. The very second I proposed this idea for a top 10 list, the guys threw me in charge of recording it. Throw me any mask I can wear so they can't find me. Alright, fine. What's up, everybody? I'm Venom, and this is the top 10 Bionicle Masks. Kicking off the list is the Kanohi Iden, the Mask of Spirit. It allows its user to temporarily release their spirit from their body. While released, their spirit can move at great speeds and inhabit other living spiritless bodies or self-powered robots. However, their original body will become limp as there is nothing inhabiting it. Basically, if you use this mask, you become a ghost. Nothing can touch you, nothing can see you, nothing can hear you. And you might be thinking, wow, that sounds pretty dang OP, but there is a drawback. Bearers of the mask can't use any elemental powers while they are in this state. But back to the plus side, the user would be able to control any sort of lifeless body, regardless of what it belonged to, and the user would even be able to travel a very far distance or unreachable place. For example, Motoro, in the Bionicle story, used his Kanohi to follow Holly around underwater, which is something he wouldn't be able to do otherwise. It's a great mask that deserves to be on this list for being so expendable, but it doesn't really compare to Motoro's next mask, which is number 9, the Kannohi Trynna, the Mask of Reanimation, which allows its user to give artificial life to dead bodies and the ability to control them, so long as the user maintains concentration. And the more zombies the user creates, the more concentration he or she is going to need. And yes, I did say zombie because that's exactly what this mask does. It allows the user to create zombies. And Motoro actually did do this with his Kannohi Trynna, where he raised an army of undead Takia sharks. I mean, man, this mask is so edgy, not even a common Toa would want to use it because it's considered immoral. And I guess that's a legitimate perspective considering you literally use it to raise the dead and reanimate them to do your bidding. But that's why it's on this list. But I guess you could say this mask did fail in trying to place for number 8. Ha! Mask pun. At number 8, we have the Kannohi Mota, the Mask of Telekinesis. It allows its user to move targets within their range of view by utilizing the power of thought. In more basic terms, you can move things around with the power of your mind. Telekinesis is a fairly commonly known power. If you don't know what it means to have telekinesis, go pick up a comic book. But if you are familiar with it, then it should be easy to grasp the concept of why it is on this list. Users of this mask would probably be able to do some heavy lifting, or just throw things around without even having to lift a finger. For example, in the story, Toa Nuju used his Matatu to lift Vakama all the way onto the Great Barrier in the Legends of Metro Nui movie. That's a pretty far distance, and he didn't even have to physically lift up Vakama. Onua even used a Matatu during his battle with Liwa, while Liwa's mask was infected, mentally launching various objects at him. It's pretty obvious that this mask has some pretty great use in both combat and in other basic usage. However, there is, of course, a couple of other masks that are a bit more useful than this. So moving on to number 7, we have the Kannohi Vahi, the Mask of Time, which allows its user to speed up or slow down time. It's considered a legendary Kannohi for its great, immense power. And I mean, this thing is so powerful, it's actually pretty hard to control. If you screw up wearing this mask, or if you somehow manage to damage it, time will get thrown just completely out of whack. And that can lead to some dangerously unpredictable results. But with some proper control over it, you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. Vakama used it to give him the edge during his battle with Makuta Pterodax, slowing down time in order to keep up with his titanic adversary. Vakama showed that it's very useful for combat. However, the risk of even using this thing to begin with, and the fact that you can't even use it to time travel. I mean, there's no Marty McFly in this. That sets it back down the list by a good bit. And so, for number 6, we have the Kannohi Gura, the Mask of Gravity, which allows its user to increase or decrease a target's gravitational pull, manipulating how strongly a certain object is being pulled to the ground by a gravitational force. meaning if you wore this mask, you'd be able to make something lighter or heavier at your own will. Huki used this mask to pull down a giant mutated venom eel underwater, causing it to crash onto the seabed and knocking it unconscious upon impact. I mean, how hardcore is that? He even used it to lift up the entire Coliseum in Metro Nui. I mean, that's crazy. That is freaking crazy. And it's that kind of craziness that places the Kannohi Gura in its rightful spot on this list. It's almost like telekinesis, but crazier. But it's actually not as crazy as this next one on the list. Placing at number 5, we have the Kannohi Koala, the Mask of Quick Travel, which allows its user to instantly move to any place in their field of vision. Meaning if you're looking at something from far away, you can instantly teleport to it using this mask. Not only would this provide the user with some pretty cool combat advantage, I mean, just think Nightcrawler from X-Men. One could imagine just how useful this mask is for various other objectives. Even the simplest of purposes, Iruni used his Koala to teleport next to a cage that housed 4 of his fellow Toa, who are at this point now Rahaga. I mean, that doesn't sound impressive, but come on, man. Instead of walking around or running, who needs any of that? You can just teleport. You don't have to move your legs like at all. It's that appeal to laziness that places the Koala on this list. But I guess the Koala isn't as cool as, say, placing at number 4, the Kannohi Olesi, the Great Mask of Alternate Futures, which allows its user to project a mental illusion of an alternate timeline or a possible future into one or more beings' minds simultaneously. The user can also see the illusion. And you may be thinking, wow, that's pretty cool to see into the future and have someone else see into their future. How is that better than all the other crazy stuff you brought up earlier? Well, allow me to provide some examples of its usage. The being Karzani used his Alesi on 7 Matoran all at once to show them what would happen if the Great Spirit Matanui had died. And bear in mind, this is done through visions, so it's almost as if the Matoran are living through this. Karzani could literally make anybody go insane through his illusions, and it's this mask and its great power that would permit him to do so. That would make for some pretty excellent advantage in combat if you can just send these crazy visions to your opponent. I mean, that's pretty much what Karzani did in Dark Destiny. It's this amount of power that places the Alesi as high on the list as it is, but there are a few more masks that have more potential power than this one. So placing at number 3, we have the Kannohi Faxon, the Mask of Kindred, which allows its user to mimic the powers of Rahi that share their general environment. So say if a user like Holly were underwater, that means that she would be able to use the powers of Rahi that were also underwater. Rahi vary in all different kinds of abilities and powers and natural immunities. That's right, natural immunities. Holly once mentioned in Prisoners of the Pit that there are beasts of the sea immune to any venom, and she could share this immunity if she chose to. One notable usage of this mask that really shows just the potential of its power is when Holly used it to replicate a sea creature's hypnotic ability in order to force a giant squid into sleep. Just imagine that you could do that with another opponent. The Faxon grants its user access to just a wide variety of abilities depending on where the user is and what kind of Rahi surround him or her. If there are Fiku spiders surrounding the user, they'd probably gain spider powers. Given that there are so many different Rahi in the Bionicle universe, this leads to many possibilities, and that is why the Waxin' Flaxin' Michael Jackson Faxon places so high on this list, but not as high as our next mask. Placing at number 2, we have the Kannohi Olaf, the Mask of Dimensional Gates, or as many of us are familiar with, the Mask of Gigantic Cheeks, which grants its user the ability to transport him or herself and or other targets to different locations through portals, one portal at a time. Users would also be able to travel beyond the Matoran universe, so Brutaka could probably go visit the Hero Factory team if he wanted to. So say if the user was in the middle of combat, then their opponent could just be teleported away to some random dimension. I mean, this is like almost god tier overpowered. And not only is it useful for combat, but it's also useful in other areas such as just being a jerk. I mean, Brutaka used it to teleport the big, green, and monstrously dangerous Tatarak to Mentionui just to get a good laugh. The Olmac was also used to bring Takanuva back from his alternate universe escapades. The Olmac's got some crazy, almost unlimited potential that could be tapped. But before we get to the mask that we here at TTV believe tops the Olmac, let's acknowledge some honorable mentions. The first honorable mention, the Kannohi Ignika, the Mask of Life. And now, I know what you're thinking. How is the Mask of Life not number 1 on this list? How is it that it's never been mentioned up until this point? That's because it's basically on its own power level. There's not really all that much that you can compare it with. It's even basically a sentient being. It created its own body. It forced other living beings into acting as bodyguards for it. But in the end, it is still a mask, and it is still worth mentioning in this video. But wait, Venom, it's on the same power level as the Vahi and the Mask of Creation, and you had the Vahi in the earlier part of the video. It was on the list, Venom. What are you doing? No, shh, don't want to hear it. Moving on to our next honorable mention, the Kannohi Hao. From an objective standpoint, the Kannohi Hao, the Mask of Shielding, is a pretty great mask in that it allows its user to protect themselves from any physical attack that they are aware of by generating some sort of force field. And of course, the Hao is definitely the most recognized mask of all of Bionicle. When it came to Bionicle advertisement, you would always see the Hao way back when. It's the iconic mask of Bionicle, and that's really the big reason why it's an honorable mention. And now, the number 1 Bionicle mask, the Kannohi Aki Nuva, the Nuva mask of Valor, which provides its user the enhanced powers of shielding, strength, and speed, which are all combined powers of the Hao, the Kakama, and the Pakari. The user would be able to activate its powers separately or all together, and it would be able to share all of its powers with those nearby. However, this mask can only be created by the formation of a Toa Nuva Kaida, and so long as that Kaida is in formation, this mask exists. So if the Kaida disassembles, this mask is gone forever. Well, until they assemble again. The Aki Nuva was never formed in the story, so there aren't any notable examples of its usage, but you can use your imagination. I mean, the bearer of this mask would be quite the foe to reckon with. You might as well be fighting Superman. And when it comes to general usage, that also has a similar extent. The user is basically Superman, without the ability to fly. So with that said, this is why the Aki Nuva places at number 1 on the top 10 Bionicle masks. But of course, that's just our thoughts. What are yours? Post your own top 10 Bionicle masks in the comments below, and bring that discussion over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvpodcast.com. This is Ven, and thank you all for watching.